Hi, good morning, everybody. I guess we'll get started. I think we are running a little late already. So, first of all, welcome to this session and thank you for showing up here. I wasn't sure that between SAFE and Kanban and two-phase commit in Kanban, which was more attractive. I myself thought of going there, but unfortunately, that I can't do that. So, anyway, so let's get started. So, two-phase commit for delivery success using Kanban. I thought I would see a different view here, but irrespective. I'll just give you a little bit of introduction to who I am and my company a little bit. And then talks about the sort of notional fixed price, fixed date culture that exists in software organizations, whether they are still doing traditional or whether they have already moved on to agile in some form or the other, but that mentality that exists and the challenges that come through that. And then how does Kanban help? And specifically look at the two-phase commit process of Kanban, the two-phase commit feature of Kanban systems, and also upstream Kanban to some extent. And talk a little bit about how we do it internally at Digite. That's my company. And what has been the impact of using that or sort of living with that in our own company's management approach or management culture. So, firstly, a little bit about myself. My name is Mahesh Singh, just in case you didn't catch that already. I'm a co-founder at Digite. I've been doing this for the last 17 years now, 15 after our sort of second reincarnation. That's a long story, won't go into that. About 25 plus years in software products, IT services, consulting, and training. I am a KCP. I'm a AKT in progress. My WIP limit there is somewhat constrained, so I've not yet finished the process of the paperwork, especially involved in completing the process. And my recent roles at Digite have been product management, consulting, and currently I handle marketing. And I've been a Bay Area resident for the last 25 years. Any Bay Area people? All right, good show. Only two, so good to meet a lot of people here in the DC area. Once you get to the Bay Area, the challenge is that you can't leave, and that's exactly what's happened to me. And I thought I'd share a little bit of personal information. My wife thinks I'm a devoted dad. And that's my daughter, and that's my dog. He's going to be 42 years in human years, 6 in dog years. Or I don't know whether that's got to be the other way around. And I have recently started to drink beer. I have been a drinker, but I discovered that I can actually tolerate beer. And I have therefore become the founder of a men's support group that I founded. It's called the Staggerers. And these are all the guys. Women and girls are in general good at getting together and sharing problems and so forth. I thought the guys weren't so good at that. So we said we'll start to do this. There is a lot of recent research, I don't know if some of you have read that if you get together with your friends, the guys, if you get together with your friends and meet a minimum of 2 times a week and have a drink, that's actually supposed to be really good for your mental health and long-term physical health. So if you haven't started to do that yet, here's a hint. All right, enough about myself. My company is called Digite. We are headquartered in Cupertino, California. We are a software company in the space of lean and agile application lifecycle management, project management, and global delivery. We provide our products in SaaS and on-prem. And our three products are Swift Kanban, which is what we're showcasing here. Just a little bit of plug for that. Swift ALM, which is our application lifecycle management product, and Swift Sync, which is an integration tool that integrates with roughly about 50 odd tools that are in the space of software engineering, project management, help desk, and so forth. So my experience personally, as well as our team's collective experience, comes from working with our customers who are in a variety of different spaces, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit. Just a quick look at some of our large customers, or rather a range of our customers, including some very large companies around the world. You will probably recognize quite a few of those. And we've typically 60 to 70% of our work happens with IT and IT ops and DevOps type of organizations in these companies. So we have a lot of experience personally working on software and IT type of projects. About 20 to 30% of our experience comes from working with non-IT, non-tech functions, so marketing and legal and HR, etc. People like these who use our products and use it for their own process improvement efforts. So let's get going on the challenges in software delivery. So here, of course, I'm talking specifically about the software delivery challenges that we see in our ecosystem. Um, so the companies that we work with, I showed you a little bit of a list, but the companies that we work with, a large part of our market actually is in India. We have an interesting history. We started in the Bay Area, but our first product, Swift ALM, was really appreciated by the large IT service providers who are very process mature, typically tend to be CMMI level 5 certified. In fact, therefore, I had a good chat with the people, the CMMI folks out there. So they really appreciated that capability, and therefore for historic reasons, we have a very strong market in India, and we work a lot with these kind of companies. Of course, we work with a variety of other organizations as well, typically medium and large companies, IT, government, ISVs, etc. So we've seen the sort of trends of software and software project management across a variety of these companies. That's sort of the background that I'm trying to provide here. And so there are two interesting trends, and some of the sort of dichotomy here is more representative of what's happening with IT services companies or outsourced project companies. So if you look at it, obviously most companies, most large organizations have gradually moved over from traditional to agile in the last, let's say, 15 to 20 years. And if you look at the latest State of Agile survey by version 1, they say that 94% of respondents to that survey that they do talk about the fact that their organizations have adopted Agile, although not 94% of projects have moved over to Agile. So there is some lower level of percentage that continues to still be with traditional methods, waterfall, iterative, etc. But in terms of number of companies, 94% have adopted Agile. When it comes to outsourced projects, though, they say that 51% of the projects, or 51% of organizations have adopted Agile in outsourced projects. And if you talk to our customers who are outsourced service providers, an Infosys or a Cognizant or a Wipro or companies like that, if you look at their own project mix, the overall set of work that they do, the adoption of Agile is about 15 to 20% roughly in the last maybe one to 1.5 years. So rest of the business that they do, which is fairly substantial, still continues to be in the traditional application development and maintenance work, which tends to be more traditional in their overall approach. So, but they're trying to move over to Agile. And certainly companies in North America and Europe, which is where their customers tend to be, they are certainly all moved to Agile. At the same time, when it comes to their project management structures or the contracts that they want to sign with these companies, they're actually pushing them from moving to what they used to call offshore development centers, where they had dedicated teams that would work on a continuous basis and on a more of a time and material basis. They're pushing these organizations to actually make project and fixed price commitments. So even though they are, as a trend, they're all moving towards Agile, they're actually pushing these companies, their outsourced service providers, to give them upfront commitments on timeline and on estimates and on cost. So which is interesting, which in a way places stress on them in terms of how do you do that while you're trying to be more collaborative, while you're trying to make commitments which are realistic and obviously deliver to those commitments. There is a small trend, probably not relevant really for this talk, but which is outcome-based projects. So there are companies that are trying to, the service provider companies, that are trying to get into more of an outcome-based engagement, where they don't want to get paid for the project itself, but they want to get paid out of the ROI that the customer gets, whether it's a top-line gain or a bottom-line gain or some other measure of ROI. They want a share of that. Some of the sort of, I would say, more professional or more mature companies are trying to do that, but it's still a very small trend. So if you look at it overall, the general trend in companies that are doing traditional work or traditional methods certainly still remains of how do you manage the three arms of the iron triangle, as they say, the scope, schedule, and resources, while giving consistent quality of work to their customers. That remains a challenge. And I thought nothing better than to look at some Dilbert pictures to illustrate some of these challenges. So you can see that teams and maybe individual business units are ready to move to Agile, and they are actually doing things to move to Agile. But customers or management might be still stuck in the sort of traditional ways and want commitments on delivery dates, on cost, and on specific scope of work to be delivered. There's another picture that talks about the requirements management challenge. So there are 2 or 3 aspects of how companies deal with requirements. How do you deal with features that you're being asked to work on? In the traditional method, I have my colleague here, Sudhi, who runs our professional services and consulting business. Both of us have spent years in the industry pushing customers to freeze their requirements. Right? You could not start on projects till the requirements had been frozen, signed off, and sealed. And therefore, the customers who were, of course, also in the same sort of frame of mind, their effort to document each and every requirement that they could conceive of and make sure that they had everything in it before they gave it off to the vendor was also very high. So therefore, there was a lot of pressure to make sure that all the requirements had been identified up front. The problem obviously is not so much in Agile, although there's a different twist to that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. On the other hand, companies like Digite, we are a software vendor, and most ISVs have, especially those that work closely with their customers, have a fairly high demand in terms of what enhancements we should make to our products and what new features we should bring out to the market. And as you can see, this really illustrates very well how do you really make sure that you satisfy customer demand in terms of requirements, but at the same time educate them that lesser might be better. Easier might be better rather than more sophisticated, more complex, more features. So that's the sort of second aspect of managing high, backlog volumes. There is another aspect which is of high discard rates. We haven't yet started to measure it in our own case, although we will start to do that. We have just released a feature that lets us track discard. How many features have we accepted? Not accepted, but we've added to our backlog. But have later discarded because those requirements are no longer important. And I'm sure all of you have seen that. So, very quickly you start to build very large backlogs of unaddressed change requests or unaddressed new feature requests and so forth, because they simply become too old, or they are no longer needed, or the market needs have changed. And so, and they might not be critical enough. So therefore, the challenge of how do you make sure that you're not working, or your dev teams are not being asked to work on things that are no longer required. That's an important aspect of how do you manage your delivery process. And of course, coming out of all those requirement problems then is a challenge that dev teams face, that how do you make commitments, or how do you make budgets and plans based on the scope that's been given to you? Is that scope even realistic enough or real enough? So clearly you have therefore unrealistic project estimates, whether it is cost or time, etc. And the last one, I think this is the last of my cartoons, the inevitable delivery challenge, right? You may have projects going on forever, and no one seems to be able to have the ability to take on the question as to why this is happening, why this continues to happen. And again, happens at different levels in different types of organizations. So if you look at it in a summary way, especially for outsourced engagements and for traditional environments, on the one hand, on the customer, there is a pressure to define requirements up front, and then the customer in turn places the pressure on delivery teams to make commitments which may or may not be realistic, which in most likely they would be unrealistic. And finally, there is the whole effort of not making changes, whether it is your 9 to 12-month project plan or whether it is a 2-week sprint. There is a pressure not to change scope, and if the scope changes, there is a lot of stress on the team as to how do you deal with that change of scope. So in a sense, that problem has become sort of narrowed down to the 2-week sprint time bucket in agile teams, but we continuously hear about the challenges agile teams face in terms of following the Scrum method in the right way, in the proper way, and the whole aspect of Scrum, but because they're not following everything that Scrum specifies or asks them to do. So these are some of the challenges or the backdrop of challenges that software delivery teams face, which I thought was very meaningfully addressed by the two-phase commit feature of the Kanban overall. So again, this is just to kind of summarize the various challenges. Let's just go past this. So enter Kanban and two-phase commit. How many of you have gone through any of the Kanban training, KMP 1 or 2? Okay, so some of you might relate to these slides. I mean, those of you who have gone through it will relate to it, especially if you've gone through the KMP 2 class. Just a couple of slides from there which explain the concept of the two-phase commit in Kanban. So here you can see that this is a typical Kanban board that shows you that there is a backlog of ideas. which are your typical way of managing any demand that's being placed on you in terms of the overall set of things that you're supposed to work on. And then there is the Kanban board, which has got different columns with those red numbers, those WIP limits. And the idea is that you defer commitment. The team does not actually commit to doing something till they have pulled something on the Kanban board, right? So Kanban systems are pull systems, and when you actually pull work onto the Kanban board, that's when you're making commitment that you're going to do this work. So just the fact that something is sitting in your backlog, we used to have massive lists of CRs and feature requests, and we would continue to stress, I'm talking about Digitide as a company, simply because the customer had expressed an interest in a particular feature. And it was only in 2010 when we started to work with Kanban ourselves that we learned the whole aspect of how do you actually make commitments and at what point is your commitment real. So in that sense, commitments is deferred, and this is your sort of the first commitment point, the first phase, phase one commit, if you want to call it that. And only when you've made this commitment, now you're saying that yes, you have taken this on, and from this point onwards, you want to avoid aborting anything that you're doing. So you not only are focusing on getting the right things onto the board and therefore making commitment from that point onwards, you're also saying that, hey, now that I've started this, we should avoid aborting this work as much as possible because we have jointly taken the decision to move this up onto the Kanban board. And on the other hand, the customer also implicitly, the customer or the business user, depending on your context, is also making the commitment that they are committed to getting started on this work and that they will accept this work, they will take delivery of this work when they are done with it, when the delivery team is done with it. So there is a two-way understanding on both sides that yes, we are starting to work on this, and when it gets completed, it will get delivered to the customer environment. So that's sort of the phase one of the commit. The second aspect of it, of course, like I said earlier, the items that are in the backlog continue to remain as options, and they are not yet committed to being worked on, and therefore they are unprioritized. The second aspect of the Kanban systems is that it lets you highlight anything that you discard. So you can actually define an area on your Kanban board that is your discard area, the discard column, if you want to call it that. And you can actually see how many of your options that you had started off with were actually rejected or actually discarded by the customer or by the team jointly. So you can actually use the Kanban system to track your discards. And in many environments, you can have very high discard rates. I'm not sure if any of you here track the number of options, the number of backlog items that get discarded. But anybody? Anyone that tracks it? We haven't, like I said, we haven't decided to do it. We know that they are there, but we don't yet have real data for it. Sorry, was somebody saying here? David shares the case study of Microsoft XIT where they had discard rates as high as nearly 50%. So the fact is that there is a large number of requirements that get discarded or abandoned after they have actually been, the teams have started to work on it. So that's something that represents waste if you've started to work on it, the effort that the teams put to work on it. So you want to guard against that. And the last aspect of this is the delivery side. So the actual delivery commitment need not be made, that is a specific release date or a specific commitment need not be made till you're later down the system. As work starts to accumulate in the columns that you see here, the testing in the UAT, and you start to accumulate work here, the delivery team then becomes much more able to say, okay, you got enough work completed, and therefore you are now ready to make a release. So rather than making a commitment upfront without having completed work yet, you can actually try and defer it in agreement with the customer to say that when you have enough work done, you will actually make a release. So let me just go ahead and make that. So that's the second commitment point. When you got work sitting in your infinite buffer queue, which is in this case the UAT complete or UAT queue, and when you're actually ready to make a release, you go ahead and say that you're ready to make the release. In our case, for example, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later down. But in our case, we initially started off with a process that we decided that when we had 20 items done in our own system, whether those 20 were made up of user stories or enhancements or defects that we had fixed, the moment we had 20 items in our done queue, we would make a release. And then we have evolved from there, and I'll share a little bit of that as to how we've evolved. So that's your sort of second commitment point. And between the phase one commit and the phase two commit, you have the ability to sort of get into a proper agreement with customers of how you will manage the work that's getting done by the delivery team, and make sure that they are sort of fully engaged in terms of the work that is actually important and needs to be done. So just to kind of summarize that, from backlog to ready, the dev team makes a commitment that they're actually ready to start on it, and the customer makes the commitment that they are ready to accept that work when the work is completed, and also the fact that this work is important. This is the right set of things to work on. So that's the commitment that the customer is making. And the second, on the other side, from the done to ready, the dev teams need not make a commitment up front. They can look at their actual performance data. Many of you have seen pictures of the lead time distribution chart. You can look at your actual performance data and make commitments later towards the end as work starts to get completed, so that you can make realistic commitments to the delivery date. And also, so just to get back to one point, we are ourselves a SaaS company, so we have our software getting deployed on our production servers, which we host on Amazon, and we try obviously to make our releases as quickly as possible, so that we have defect fixes or new features made available to our customers as soon as possible. But we do have customers who install our software on-prem. And probably 30 to 35% of our customers have the software installed in-house. So they have the flexibility that they don't necessarily have to take every release that we make. So we make a release roughly about every month. Large IT organizations are reluctant to take up new releases every so often, because there is a cost to making those, to deploying those releases. There is risk in terms of quality, there is cost in terms of deployment, there is both human resources and other infrastructure costs. So in our case, they are free to choose when they want to take that delivery, and we are able to support that. So the ability to do that and for the customer to have that flexibility is also an important aspect of the two-phase commit. So overall, just to I'll just go ahead and build up this slide. There is a greater sense of collaboration between the customer or the end user and the delivery team, because you have this ability, or you have the framework that's available to you to firstly identify the things that are important and need to be worked on, the commitment to not abort those once you have taken them on, and then to be able to absorb them into your delivery or production environment when you're ready for it. So these 3 points become available to both the delivery as well as to the customer because of this two-phase commit feature of Kanban, which I thought was invaluable in terms of the way that you can solve some of the challenges that you have in your typical software development environment. There are other aspects of Kanban which I'm sure you've heard a lot of during this conference. So firstly, of course, the fact that it's a pull system, which therefore means that both the customer and the dev team have committed to the fact that you will only take up new work when there is capacity to do the work. So therefore, there is already the trend to not push work down the pipeline when there is no capacity to work. The ability to focus on upstream Kanban, that is upstream workflows in your system. We ourselves also went from focusing on dev to focusing on upstream, which is our product management, and sales and marketing activity, to really identify which are the right set of features to work on and to drive that to dev. And I'll show you some pictures of that. And then lastly, the classes of service. Kanban again helps you organize your work to make sure that you're not only we're focusing on your value demand, which is the new set of features and enhancement that you're supposed to work on, or that you're focusing on from a market requirement perspective. But you also have a lot of interrupt-driven work that your teams do. And many times as teams are planning their work and planning the scope and the effort for the next release or the next sprint or the next project, you tend to forget the fact that there is a lot of unplanned work that's also being supported by these customers and by these delivery teams. And the ability to sort of classify your work by class of service and be able to plan for that and actually visualize that on your Kanban board also makes it easy for you to communicate to everybody involved that there is this aspect of work that's also being done that needs to be planned for. So here is how we have done it. I'll show you a little bit about the way that we have. So we have been using Kanban for the last 5 years now. We launched our Swift Kanban product in 2010, and as soon as we did it, we started to use it ourselves. So, but as a really sort of full-featured product, it became available by 2012. So we've been really using it well since that time frame. And in that time frame, we have also trained our own entire company in Kanban. We manage all of our work we're using Kanban, whether it is software development, marketing, uh, support, implementation projects that we do. Pretty much everything is on Kanban. So to that extent, we are real converts to the overall Kanban method. Here is how we have done it. At this point we're probably in the fourth or fifth iteration of our Kanban boards that we use for our product development. So we have now got an upstream Kanban board, which is our roadmap planning board. And then we have a lower level downstream board, which is our dev board. And I'll show you some actual screenshots of that. So the first board that you see on the top is our roadmap. That has also evolved a little bit. I'll show you a closer picture of that. And then you have a fairly elaborate dev board. Our dev team is about 25 people, and we work on 3 different products. And also we work on some specific activities. You can see some swim lanes that we have at the bottom there that says Swift Kanban documentation board. We had some Swift Singh customer engagement work. So sometimes our teams are also called in to work on specific things for our customers or for specific engagements. So we have some swim lanes meant for that. In terms of our roadmap planning and our sort of backlog grooming activity that we do, we have 3 levels of work that we have defined. So at the top level, which I have not shown here, is what we call our product themes. So we have long-running topics or themes or ideas on which we are working, whether it is performance improvement, whether it is our UI and usability, whether it is our analytics and charts and reports, etc. So we have about 10 or 11 themes on which we work at any point in time. And out of those themes, we have our major sort of features, which we call epics. And the epics go through that workflow that you see there. So you have a functional specifications phase. We go through a UX analysis phase. So the UX team gets into action, defines the wireframes and the UI for the features and the actual implementation, the navigation of those features. And then we do the story splitting of those epics in the last phase. And those stories then get planned. If you see in the bottom, they get planned for the next release and up to 4 releases after that. So that's our process of planning these releases. So in one way, and I'll talk a little bit about our cadence. So we do twice a month replenishment meetings where our sales, marketing, product management, and engineering get together, and we decide what is the next set of things that we need to do. Important from a code refactoring perspective, important from a critical customers perspective, and important from a roadmap perspective. So we all get together, and we are in different time zones. We get together on our go-to-meeting call, and we go through this board to see what are the next set of stories that we want to take up. And those then get planned for either typically the next next release, but also the future releases that are out there. That's one place where we make a commitment that these are the stories that we will start to work on. But actually, if you look at, so that's the roadmap board. This is a downstream board, which is our dev teams board. And as you can see here, we have a ready for dev queue where we have actually defined a minimum WIP limit. We have had some occasions where our dev team has actually not had enough work. And because we were not organized enough to have identified all the things that we needed to work on next. It's rare. It never happens. Actually, most of the time our dev team is completely swamped. But there have been a couple of occasions where we have actually violated the minimum WIP limit. So this is the place where the unplanned work directly enters. So while our user stories and enhancements come from the roadmap board, our defects that we find internally, as well as our customer reported defects, get directly logged into this dev ready queue. So this is also the second point of, in a way, sort of 1A, 1B of our commitment points. These are the actual work items that we will pull from. And once we pull them, then that's when work starts on those items. So in a way, our phase 1 is split partly into the upstream board, which is our roadmap board, and then also this pulling of work happens on a daily stand-up basis. As people finish their existing ongoing work, then they take up the next set of work. So the pulling from this queue happens on a daily basis, depending on the actual work status. On the other end of the same lane, so we have a fairly long, elaborate lane. I don't have a screenshot of the complete workflow. We follow a test-driven development methodology. So we don't have a QA function as such. Our developers make sure that whatever they build, they automate as well. And once they automate, it goes through code review. And once the code review is done, it goes into our internal staging server, which is the validation server that you see there. And the validation is done actually by our functional people. So documentation team, product managers, And even sometimes sales will get in because they are looking for some critical features that customers are waiting for. And so sales might get in actually and do some testing themselves. So that's the validation phase. And Ganesha, which is our internal production server, is the place where we keep our releases for maybe 2 weeks at a time till we have all hammered at it and we made sure that that release is ready to go. And then that's the time when we say, okay, we are now ready to make a release, and then it goes to production. So we actually, as you can see, this is a screenshot that I took just this morning. We were making a fairly a large release, partly because of this event. We were trying to complete a few things before the event. And so you see that we have violated our own WIP limit. We took on some additional items simply because of this critical event. So we are flexible in that sense, and you'll see that in our some of our charts and metrics that you see. But this is what you see here is our second commit point. And on average, we have established a cadence of roughly 4 to 6 weeks that we make a release. So we don't stress too much about the fact that sometimes the releases might get to 6 weeks. Sometimes it might get done in 3 weeks even. But as long as there is, as soon as we have enough work that can be delivered and it is stable, we go ahead and make production releases on our SaaS. And this information goes out to our on-prem customers, so they know that there is a new release out there, and they are able to take it up whenever they want to. So just a few charts from our own work. So this is the throughput or the velocity chart, which shows you the release scope or release velocity. So you can see on average we've done probably in the range of 15 to 18 items per release that we have done in the last 7 or 8 releases. This is data that I'm showing you since October of 2016, so last 8 months of data. So this is on a release basis, and this same chart but on a monthly cadence. So you can see also that on a monthly cadence we are in that same range, 15 to 18 work items that we do. And the colors there show you different types of work that we do. User stories. Our 4 major works are user stories, enhancements, defects, and customer defects. Also one, I think it shows that the blue, which is tasks, not a lot of them in this chart. Tasks are engineering items that we take up for refactoring purposes, performance enhancement or security related work and things like that. So you can see that between the last chart and this one, we have a fairly steady delivery capability, which helps us therefore make commitments to both our internal management, or to my CEO, or to our customers to say, hey, on average, this is what we are able to do. And therefore, if you're looking for something new, which we have already planned, you will get it in the next 2 release cycles or the next 3 release cycles, etc. Like I said, our release cycle is roughly 4 to 6 weeks. We do monthly release planning. So on a monthly basis, our product owner for Swift Kanban will send out a list of things that we are looking at, and then we'll get into it every 2 weeks to look at what is this actual work that we'll push to the dev team. We do daily stand-ups, and we do monthly and quarterly. We are not very organized about our retrospectives. We typically tend to do quarterly or somewhere between a monthly and quarterly. But we do look at our board activity to say what was it that we did, what were some of the problems that we faced, and so forth. Yes?
When you say monthly release planning, you're talking about like service delivery review? Not like the Scrum style release planning, scheduling stories over the next 3 quarters, 3 months?
No, yeah. So it is more of the service delivery way. It's a delivery planning meeting. So the question was, is it more of a service delivery planning kind of a meeting, or is it more of the Scrum-based, next 3 months release planning type of a cycle? So we do monthly releases. Therefore, ours is more of a delivery planning style of meeting, where we're looking at what set of things can be considered for the next release cycle, the next month, and we discuss those. Right, and then we of course fine tune that further in the bi-weekly replenishment meeting that we do. All right, so those are some of the specific things that I wanted to share about the way that we manage internally. What has been the impact on that? So till 2010, we were fairly a waterfallish company. I have to admit that. We used to do maybe 1 or 2 major releases a year. This is for our older product, and we had all of the traditional trappings of our CEOs and our CEO and our customers chasing us about what is going to come in the next release, which is going to be 4 months later, and why did we miss a bunch of things in a specific release that we just did. So a lot of heartburn, a lot of stress. The product management and engineering would go through a lot of stress simply trying to decide what were the set of things that we had to do. So I would say roughly between 2008 8 and 10, we really came to a stage where we said, okay, we had to do something about that. And fortunately, we met up with David. I met him in 2010. Interestingly, in an SEBG conference, which is quite different from an agile conference. But that's when we started our journey towards Kanban. And it has had a significant impact on our internal culture. So let's just want to share a little bit about that. So this is our little bit of a dig at Scrum. So we say that instead of committing to a release scope up front, which is what happens in Scrum, we make a release when there are enough commits, which is code commits on our staging server, on our internal production server. Anyway, that's just so just to I just build up this slide. These are some of the things that we have seen really change the way that our teams work, our management works, and the way that we have interacted overall. Firstly, there is a greater representation of all functions. So everybody who needs to be part of the planning, all the stakeholders, they feel that they have the ability to participate in this activity of prioritizing what needs to get done, who's got what priorities with them, and at an overall level get that comfort feel that yes, their work is also getting represented. The second thing is that in terms of the collaboration between project management and engineering, there is a complete sea change. In fact, now we almost work like a single team. The current manager of our team is actually the product owner itself. So we are somewhat untraditional in the way that we organized. Our engineering lead quit middle of 2015. And we made our product owner, who was the senior most guy in the team at the time, the head of the product team. And he has worked out fabulously. So he balances between managing the product roadmap and helping the rest of the organization, focus on what needs to happen in terms of the overall product releases. But he's also managed the coordination of the engineering. He's not a technical guy, so he can't get into code reviews and things like that. But he's able to make sure that everybody understands the priority of work, and he's actually worked out really well. The ability for the sales, especially we obviously we are still a small company. We tend to get driven somewhat by some of the larger deals that we work on, and therefore sales has a fair bit of say in terms of what we do in terms of our product development. Their ability to have influence on the product roadmap or product release plans till fairly late in the day is also crucial for us as a company. So we are able to be very responsive to our customers, and that's consistent feedback that we get in terms of how responsive we are to what our market is asking for. But I personally like the last one, which is the internal environment that has gone through a complete change, where we are no longer focused on sort of the traditional project management approach of looking at utilization. You're looking at number of hours people are spending on in the office and things like that. It's all completely gone, and we look at what's the work that everybody's got with them. If somebody's not assigned, they need to get assigned through the daily stand-up meeting. We identify those problems. Through the monthly and the bi-weekly process, planning review processes, we know what's coming up. And nobody is stressing about the fact that something that needed to be done has missed this release cycle. They know that it will happen in the next release cycle. And the wait time is not more than maybe 6 to 8 weeks out after that. So the stress about missing out on features or missing out on a market opportunity is no longer there. And that's completely changed the way that we collaborate, we interact with each other, and as a team, we work closely together. So, like I said, a very positive and energetic environment, especially important in a distributed team, and in our ability to satisfy our customers and be able to respond to what they're looking for. So that is my last slide as far as this presentation is concerned. I think we have, of course, adopted Kanban overall, and I wanted to highlight the two-phase commit in particular of how it can help. And we are trying to take that message to some of our service delivery, IT services customers, because they are the ones who face this stress the most. And if they can somehow adopt this two-phase and other aspects of Kanban successfully, I think their lives as delivery teams, as service providers, and their customers would be far more easy because they're able to work in a far more collaborative environment. So that is that. Thank you very much. Any questions?